عليهم وكان الله بما تعملون بصيرا. هم الذين كفروا وصدوكم عن المسجد الحرام والهدي معكوفا أن يبلغ محله ولولا رجال مؤمنون ونساء مؤمنات لم تعلموهم أن تطعوهم فتصيبكم منهم معرة بغير علم ليدخل الله في رحمته من يشاء. لو تزيلوا لعذبنا الذين كفروا منهم عذابا أليما. إذ جعل الذين كفروا في قلوبهم الحمية حمية الجاهلية فأنزل الله سكينته على رسوله وعلى المؤمنين وألزمهم كلمة التقوى وكانوا أحق بها وأهلها وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. لقد صدق الله رسوله الرؤيا بالحق لتدخلن المسجد الحرام إن شاء الله آمنين محلقين رؤوسكم ومقصرين لا تخافون فعلم ما لم تعلموا فجعل من دون ذلك فتحا قريبا. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار. وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات شعبانية. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، شجرة النبوة وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة ومعدن العلم وأهل بيت الوحي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، الفلك الجارية في اللجج الغامرة، يأمن من ركبها ويغرق من تركها، المتقدم لهم مارق والمتأخر عنهم زاهق واللازم لهم لاحق. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، الكهف الحصين وغياث المضطر المستكين وملجأ الهاربين وعصمة المعتصمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد صلاة كثيرة تكون لهم رضا، ولحق محمد وآل محمد أداء وغضاء بحول منك وقوة يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الطيبين الأبرار الأخيار، الذين أوجبت حقوقهم، فرضت طاعتهم وولايتهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد واعمر قلبي بطاعتك، ولا تخزني بمعصيتك، وارزقني مواساة من قدرت عليه من رزقك، بما وسعت علي من فضلك ونشرت علي من عدلك، وأحييتني تحت ظلك. وهذا شهر نبيك سيد رسلك شعبان، الذي حفظته منك بالرحمة والرضوان، الذي كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يأدب في صيامه وقيامه في لياليه وأيامه، بخوعا لك في إكرامه وإعظامه إلى محل حمامه. اللهم فعنا على الاستنان بسنته فيه ونيل الشفاعة لديه. اللهم واجعله لي شفيعا مشفعا وطريقا إليك محيا، واجعلني له متبعا حتى ألقاك يوم القيامة عني راضيا وعن ذنوبي غاضيا. قد أوجبت لي منك الرحمة والرضوان، وأنزلتني دار القرار ومحل الأخيار، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.
बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद वअज्जिल फरजहुम। मोमिनीन, आप सबको वेलकम। आज खुशामदीद कहते हैं इस खूबसूरत और अज़ीम दिन के लिए जिसमें हम विलादत मना रहे हैं हज़रत अब्बास अलैहिस्सलाम, इमाम हुसैन अलैहिस्सलाम, और कल हमने बीबी ज़ैनब अलैहिस्सलाम का जश्न विलादत को सेलिब्रेट किया। We welcome you all. Please, if you're done with your niyaz, please come into the main hall so we can start our program with recitation and salam, inshallah. Once again, all MOMINeen are requested to come inside the hall. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. اب میں ملتمس ہوں جناب سید زیدی صاحب سے کہ تشریف لائیں اور اپنا کلام جو ہے وہ پیش کریں. جزاک اللہ.
میں ہاتھ میں لے لوں گا اس کا. تمام مومن اور مومنات کو بہت بہت سلام ہے میری طرف سے.
While we preparing to start the salam, inshallah, please recite Surah Fatiha for the sponsors, Marhumeen of tonight's sponsor, Brother Hussain Jafri and Zafar Khorasani is Marhumeen with the loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
جشن ولادت امام حسین باسعادت جوانان جنت کے سردار قلب رسول اولاد علی و بطول فاتح کربلا امام حسین علیہ السلام اور شہزادی کونین شریکت الحسین فاتح کوفہ و شام جناب زینب سلام اللہ علیہ. آپ تمام مومنین کو بہت بہت مبارک ہو. جناب زینب سلام اللہ علیہ کی مناسبت سے ایک ربائی اور اس کے بعد ایک مسدس کے چند شعر. حسین بن کے زمانے پہ چھا گئی زینب، حسین بن کے زمانے پہ چھا گئی زینب، دیار کوفیو شامی ہلا گئی زینب. یزید چاہتا تھا نام حسین تک نہ رہے اور دیے یزید کے سارے بجھا گئی زینب، دیے یزید کے سارے بجھا گئی زینب. حسین بن کے زمانے پہ چھا گئی زینب. ایک مسدس جناب عظمت لکھنوی صاحب کی پیش خدمت ہے. زینب کمال سانع قدرت کا نام ہے، زینب کمال سانع قدرت کا نام ہے، اور زینب جمال روح مشیت کا نام ہے. زینب جلال صاحب عظمت کا نام ہے، اور زینب معال کار رسالت کا نام ہے. اور بیت ملاحظہ ہو، زینب ہے نام عزم رسالت معاب کا، اور زینب ہے نام مدبدبہ بو تراب کا. زینب ہے نام مدبدبہ بو تراب کا، اور زینب شعور دین پناہی کا نام ہے. زینب شعاع نور الہی کا نام ہے، اور زینب یزیدیت کی تباہی کا نام ہے. زینب یزیدیت کی تباہی کا نام ہے، اور زینب حسینیت کی بقائی کا نام ہے۔ زینب ہے نام و عظمت آل رسول کا، زینب ہے نام و عظمت آل رسول کا، اور زینب ہے جذب دین کے اصل اور اصول کا، زینب ہے جذب دین کے اصل اور اصول کا، اور زینب دل حبیب الہی کا چین ہے، اور زینب نذیر فاتح بدر و حنین ہے، زینب جناب فاطمہ کی نور عین ہے، اور زینب شریک کار امام حسین ہے، زینب شریک کار امام حسین ہے۔ بیت ملاحظہ، اور زینب حسینیت کی مدلل کتاب ہے، زینب حسینیت کی مدلل کتاب ہے، اور زینب یزیدیت کا مدلل جواب ہے، زینب یزیدیت کا مدلل جواب ہے، اور زینب ہے گلستان سعادت کی پاسباں، اور زینب ہے مصطفیٰ کی شرافت کی پاسباں، اور زینب ہے کاروان ہدایت کی پاسباں، زینب ہے ہر نبی کی نبوت کی پاسباں، زینب ہے ہر نبی کی نبوت کی پاسباں، زینب کی والدہ تھی رسالت کے ساتھ ساتھ، زینب کی والدہ تھی رسالت کے ساتھ ساتھ، ارے زینب رہیں گی زندہ امامت کے ساتھ ساتھ، زینب رہیں گی زندہ امامت کے ساتھ ساتھ، اور زینب وہ جس سے منزلت ہاشمی رہی، زینب وہ شمع حق جو ہوا میں تھمی رہی، اور زینب ستم کی جس پہ نہ کوئی کمی رہی، اور زینب جہاد راہ خدا میں جمی رہی، زینب جہاد راہ خدا میں جمی رہی، زینب کی درسگاہ ہے بزم غم حسین، زینب کی درسگاہ ہے بزم غم حسین، اور زینب کو تو عزیز ہے بس ماتم حسین، زینب کو تو عزیز ہے بس ماتم حسین۔ آخری بند ہے، اور زینب ہے سوگوار شہیدان کربلا، زینب ہے سوگوار شہیدان کربلا، اور زینب نگاہ دار اسیران کربلا، زینب سکوت شام غریبان کربلا، اور زینب سکون قلب بیابان کربلا، زینب سکون قلب بیابان کربلا، اور زینب تبر ہر سر جلاد کے لیے، زینب تبر ہے ہر سر جلاد کے لیے، اور زینب سپر ہے باقر و سجاد کے لیے، زینب سپر ہے باقر و سجاد کے لیے، زینب کمال سانع قدرت کا نام ہے۔ نعرہ صلوات۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. جزاک اللہ احسن سعید زیدی بھائی. آپ کا کلام مولا کی بارگاہ میں مقبولیت حاصل کرے انشاءاللہ. ماہ شعبان، ماہ رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم، اس مبارک منتھ میں حضرت عباس، امام حسین اور امام زمانہ حضرت قاسم، حضرت اکبر کی ولادت ہوئی. بہت ہی عظیم، بہت ہی خوبصورت منتھ ہے یہ. اس منتھ کو آپ سب کو بہت بہت مبارک ہو، یہ مہینہ آپ کو مبارک ہو، اور اس کو ہم خوش آمدید کہتے ہیں. ہمارے دوسرے ریسائٹر ہیں بھائی اکمل آغا، ان سے میں ملتمس ہوں کہ تشریف لائیں اپنا کلام کے لیے. پلیز ویلکم ہم ود اللہ صلوات. اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجہم.
برائے خوشنودی امام زمانہ بلند تر صلوات. یہ مولا عباس علم بردار کی منقبت آپ کی خدمت میں پیش کرتا ہوں. میرے غازی میں لکھوں کیسے قصیدہ تیرا. میرے غازی میں لکھوں کیسے قصیدہ تیرا. تو وفاؤں کا سمندر ہے میں ایک قطرہ ہوں. تو وفاؤں کا سمندر ہے میں ایک قطرہ ہوں. ڈوب جاؤں نہ کہیں سوچ کے یہ ڈرتا ہوں. میرے غازی میں لکھوں کیسے قصیدہ تیرا. تیری خاطر تیرے بابا نے دعائیں کی ہیں. روح زہرا نے تیری آ کے بلائیں لی ہیں. فاتح خیبر و خندق کی جھلک ہے تجھ میں، اور حسنین کے چہرے کی جھلک چمک ہے تجھ میں. خاندان بنی ہاشم کا اجالا تو ہے. جس کو مانگا ہے علی نے وہ جیالا تو ہے. میرے غازی میں لکھوں کیسے قصیدہ تیرا. تجھ کو اللہ نے بخشا ہے نرالا رتبہ. تجھ کو معصومِ عالم نے کہا ہے بیٹا. تو نے اس طرح سے پانی پہ کیا ہے قبضہ. اب لگا سکتا نہیں کوئی ستمگر پہرا. تیری زینب سے زمانے میں حیا باقی ہے. تیرا صدقہ ہے جہاں میں جو وفا باقی ہے. میرے غازی میں لکھوں کیسے قصیدہ تیرا. میرے مقصد کو ہر ایک گام حفاظت کرنا. میرے شبیر کی تا عمر حمایت کرنا. دین اسلام بچانے میرا لال اٹھے گا. میرے شبیر سے بیعت کا سوال اٹھے گا. مارنا ایسا تماچا کہ نہ پھر بول سکے. حشر تک کوئی یزیدی نہ زباں کھول سکے. میرے غازی میں لکھوں کیسے قصیدہ تیرا. ایسے مولا کی مدح کیا یہ کرے گا ہانی. प्यासा खुद रह के जो दरिया को पिलाए पानी। पूरी तारीख में ये एक सखी ऐसा है, गो नहीं हाथ मगर फिर भी अता करता है। जो लड़ा रोबे नजर से वो दिलावर ये है, जिससे सैराब है दरिया वो समंदर ये है। मेरे गाजी मैं लिखूं कैसे कसीदा तेरा। मेरे गाजी मैं लिखूं कैसे कसीदा तेरा। सलावत।
मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद। मेरे गाजी लिखूं मैं तेरा कसीदा कैसे। ये थे जनाब अकमल आगा, इनकी सेहत सलामती और सईद जैदी भाई की सेहत सलामती के लिए एक सलवात पढ़ दीजिए। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद व अज्जिल फराजहुम। हुसैन ही हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है, शऊर बंदगी उरूज आग ही हुसैन है। हुसैन ही हुसैन है, जहाँ में नूर अव्वली की रोशनी हुसैन है। हुसैन ही हुसैन है और फलाह दुर्रवी मताए आफरी अफरवी हुसैन है। हुसैन ही हुसैन है। आयान अगर आप तशरीफ़ ले आएँ तो नहीं, आयान नहीं आ सकें। अब यूथ प्रेजेंटेशन के लिए आई विल रिक्वेस्ट ब्रदर शब्बर जाफरी to come here and present the youth presentation. Please welcome him with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shabbar Jafri. I am a student in ISM, 8th grade, and I have made this presentation for Imam Hussain and Bibi Zaynab. So let's get started. So who was Imam Hussain? Imam Hussain, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, was known for his piety, wisdom, and commitment to justice. He followed teachings of his grandfather and Imam Ali. After Imam Hassan, he became the rightful leader and refused to accept Yazid's corrupt rule. He stood firmly for truth and justice, despite the challenges he faced. He was unwavering stand against the oppression of Yazid, continues to inspire millions every year and honors his legacy. Now, what was the mission of Imam Hussain? Imam Hussain stood against oppression and injustice. When Yazid, a corrupt ruler, demanded allegiance, he refused because it would mean supporting the wrongdoing. His mission was to protect the true message of Islam and guide people towards righteousness. Now, the Battle of Karbala, I'm pretty sure we all know this battle is the battle that took place on 10th of Muharram, 680 CE. Imam Hussain and his 72 companions faced Yazid and a massive army. Despite being outnumbered and deprived of water for 3 days, they remained steadfast in their fight for justice and truth. Now, the sacrifice of Imam Hussain. Imam Hussain and his companions endured immense suffering. His loved ones, including his family members, were martyred one by one. Even in his final moments, he upheld his faith and refused to surrender to oppression. His sacrifice became a timeless example of courage and faith. The legacy of Imam Hussain. Imam Hussein's stand against tyranny has inspired people for centuries. His sacrifice reminds us that truth always prevails, even in the times of overwhelming odds. His legacy continues to encourage movement for justice and righteousness across the world. How can Imam Hussein's ethics, how can they affect our day-to-day life? How can we practice his ethics? The first one is standing for truth. Always speak the truth even if you're alone. The second one is resisting injustice. Never support the oppression of any form. Patience and sacrificing. Enduring hardships make us stronger and more faithful. Kindness and compassion, care for others even in difficult times. And the most important one is faith in Allah. Stay firm in your belief no matter what comes in your way. Now, Imam Hussein's sacrifice was not only for his time but also for all of humanity. His message teaches us to live with dignity, honor, and strong faith. As he famously said, every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala, reminding us to stand for justice. Now is Bibi Zaynab. Who was Bibi Zaynab? Bibi Zaynab was a beloved daughter of Imam Ali and Bibi Fatima and the granddaughter of Prophet Muhammad. She was known for her wisdom and unwavering faith. Her role was crucial in preserving the message of Karbala. Her role in Karbala. During the Battle of Karbala, Bibi Zaynab displayed the immense bravery. She witnessed martyrdom of her brother Imam Hussain and family members. Despite the immense sorrow, she remained steadfast in protecting the women and children and stepping forward as a leader of the tragedy. Speech in Yazid's court. After the battle, Bibi Zaynab was taken as a prisoner and brought to Yazid's court in Damascus. Despite facing immense suffering, she boldly spoke against injustice, exposing Yazid's cruelty in her powerful speech, ensured that the truth of Karbala will never be forgotten. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Bibi Zaynab. Patience and strength. Bibi Zaynab is remembered for her extraordinary patience. Even in the face of her immense hardship, she never wavered in her faith. Her resilience teaches us the importance of remaining strong and steadfast during difficult times. Legacy of Bibi Zaynab. Bibi Zaynab's courage and sacrifice played a crucial role in keeping the message of Karbala alive. She remains a symbol of strength, faith, and justice, inspiring people to stand against oppression and falsehood. How can Bibi Zaynab's ethics relate to our lives? Standing for truth. She stood for truth all the way, all of Shab-e Ashur, till the speech. Standing in endurance in hardship, face difficulties with patience and trust in Allah, supporting the oppressed, defend those in need and fight against injustice. Courage and leaders lead with wisdom and bravery during tough times. Faith in Allah and trust. This also comes back to the same Imam Hussain. Conclusion. Bibi Zaynab teaches us the true meaning of resilience, faith, and courage. Her unwavering stand for the truth reminds us that real strength lies in standing firm for what is right, no matter the hardships. Her legacy continues to inspire us today. And that is all. Thank you. By Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Jazakallah Ahsan Shabbar Jafri for his blessing and encouragement. Please recite loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. एक दो अशार इमाम हुसैन अलैहिस्सलाम की खिदमत में। हुसैन और नमाज का मवाजना न कीजिए, हुसैन और नमाज का मवाजना न कीजिए, उसूल और फ़ुरूक़ का मुक़ाबला न कीजिए। हुसैन ही नमाज है, नमाज ही हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है। और मंगाए जिनके वास्ते लिबास माने खुल्द से, मंगाए जिनके वास्ते लिबास माने खुल्द से, बने हैं नाक़ईद को रसूल जिनके वास्ते, बने हैं नाक़ईद को रसूल जिनके वास्ते। फ़क़त हसन है दो जहां में और अख़ी हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है, हुसैन ही और किस्सा में भी हुसैन है, मुबाहले में भी हुसैन, किस्सा में भी हुसैन है, मुबाहले में भी हुसैन। नसारा और यजीद के मुकाबले में भी हुसैन, नसारा और यजीद के मुकाबले में भी हुसैन। मुहाज कोई भी हो मर्द आहनी हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है, हुसैन ही हुसैन है, बर मोहम्मद आले मोहम्मद सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajum. Once again, we are Dallas community and MOMIN are blessed and with the presence of Maulana Hamza Saudagar. We had been enlightened with his knowledge and insight, and will continue inshallah tonight and tomorrow, and will continue in future inshallah. Please welcome him with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا سيد الخلق أجمعين حبيبنا حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, let's recite the salawat. I'd like to congratulate all the brothers and sisters on the auspicious occasions of the beginning of Sha'ban, the births of two of our Imams, Imam al-Hussain, Imam Zaynab, salamullah alayh, and also the siblings of Imam al-Hussain, Bibi Zaynab, salamullahi alayha, as well as the warrior of Karbala, Abul Fadl al-Abbas. And hopefully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us on these occasions, or on this occasion, with the closeness to these figures, these creations of Allah, whom are the closest to Him. من أحبكم فقد أحب الله ومن أبغضكم فقد أبغض الله من أطاعكم فقد أطاع الله. Individuals, the Imams, whose love is the love of Allah. If you love Imam al-Hussain, you love Allah. If you love Imam Zayn al-Abidin, you love Allah. Getting closer to them means getting closer to Allah. You cannot get close to Imam al-Hussain unless you get close to Allah. And you cannot get close to Allah unless you get close to Imam al-Hussain. What we try to begin, the topic we try to address, using the two du'as that we have for this month, one being the salawat that is supposed to be recited midday, the lengthy salawat, shajarat al-nubuwwah, and the lengthy part of the little closer. Recite a salawat, please. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. Recite another salawat, please. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And munajat sha'baniyah, which is a great munajat. We're trying to use this as a way, as a means to help us understand certain things or be reminded of certain things that help us get closer to these individuals. What we tried to do yesterday is, when we see the concept of salawat, which is a Quranic concept in Surah Al-Ahzab, the verse that you've all memorized, Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. We try to explain that the command for us to send our salawat, which we oblige and we follow, we try to recite salawat frequently. Some have a habit of doing it on a daily basis, certain numbers, like some do it 100 times. On Friday, there was a session with Ayatollah Khushfakh, may Allah bless his soul, in Tehran, which everyone had to recite 1,000 salawat. They would get together, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the sessions of khatm of salawat, which is a great thing to do. A gathering of believers, you use something to count, and each person is to do 1,000 salawat, and collectively you do a very large amount of salawat. There's a lot of blessings when you do things in a gathering like that. The recitation of salawat, this dua, the blessing of it is not for the Ahlul Bayt. Allah is not waiting for a group of people to get together and ask Him to send His blessings upon Muhammad and al Muhammad for Him to do so. The days that the people of the world were cursing Muhammad and al Muhammad, Allah was blessing them. And the days that the people of the world are asking Allah to bless them, it's not that they are receiving any more blessings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blessing them. The benefit of that request, that supplication, asking Allah to give to Muhammad and al Muhammad the greatest of His blessings, the effect of it is on us. And one of the effects, because of the order that we find in that verse, after telling us, commanding us, ordering us to send our salawat, which is to ask Allah to send His salawat upon Muhammad and al Muhammad, is to have taslim, wasallimu taslima, to submit to the Prophet. Whatever the Prophet says, whatever the Ahlul Bayt say, whatever Bibi Fatima says, whatever Amirul Mu'mineen says, we'll be willing to follow that, submit to that, lower ourselves to that. This is what we try to discuss, and I don't want to reiterate. What I'd like to discuss, continuing on that topic, is the idea of submission or lack thereof, meaning rejecting the example we gave an individual when a certain command of God is presented by the Prophet, the man who's been with the Prophet for 10 plus years, perhaps 20 years, objects to something that he is not familiar with or his culture is against, okay? Rejecting a command, rejecting a teaching is only possible at what point? When there is knowledge. When that person heard that Rasulullah says, whoever is here performing their Hajj, they have engaged in the ceremony of Ihram, they are in the state of Ihram, they did their tawaf, they did their sa'i. If they have not brought with themselves an animal of sacrifice, then they should cut their nails or cut their hair, and they will be out of the state of Ihram, and that will be considered their Umratul Tamattu'. On the 9th of Dhul Hajjah, they will re-enter the state of Ihram and start the A'mal of Hajj. The Prophet announced this, he mentioned it. There are two groups of people. One group of people are the real believers. The real believers are the ones who, despite this new teaching being against what they are familiar with, different than what they are familiar with, against the Arab culture that they had, they're willing to submit because this is Rasulullah. Rasulullah said, this is what you need to do, we're going to do it. I don't care what our culture says. That's a good believer. Then you have another person who's amongst the believers, who says he's a believer, who later on claims to be the Khalifa of Rasulullah, But when the Rasulullah says this, he objects. He doesn't want to submit. Okay. Submitting or rejecting happens at what point? After you have knowledge. When you are informed. When you read something. When you know something. I want to talk a little bit about this idea. Let me put it in a slightly different way. One of the teachings, we said we want to submit to the teaching of Muhammad and al-Muhammad, right? Whatever they have said. One of the teachings of Muhammad and al-Muhammad, which is found in the Quran, and the Quran is a reflection or is a set of teachings that Muhammad and al-Muhammad's entire ideology is based on. If you want to know what Amir al-Mu'mineen believes in, refer to the Quran. If you want to know Imam al-Husain's views on the world, on God, on the hereafter, on anything, refer to the Quran. Their views are entirely identical with what the Quran says. All right. It's found in the Quran, this teaching, and it's also found in the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt. I'm going to quote one hadith from Imam al-Sadiq, very well-known hadith. The Quranic verse that I'm going to quote is not fully what I'm intending to get across. It's partial, but it has a word there that the hadith has. The hadith is more inclusive. I'll elaborate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, لَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لَيَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. Why don't a group from amongst each tribe, each clan, each group of people, why don't they go and يَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ? The word that we have is what? تَفَقُّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. Understanding. What is it saying? There needs to be a process of studying and understanding in depth the deen, the religion. That's what the verse says. But the thing about this verse is, it's in a context of commands or orders that are given for going to jihad, and people would want to go and fight in the battlefield. God tells them, I don't want everyone to go to the battlefield. At least some of you go and do this. What? تَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ وَلْيَنْظُرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ. If I remember that, the wording correctly. It might have been slightly misworded, but I'm just giving you a reference. Some of those words are accurate. You can go and find it in the Quran. So that's why it's partial. It doesn't say to everyone. I don't want to say it says that we don't need to. All of us don't need to. That's not what the verse says. But what the verse says, first and foremost, is a group of you go and do tafaqquh fi din. This is the verse. That word is used. We have hadith. This is found in Al-Kafi from Imam al-Sadiq salamullah alayhi. He said, I wish I could use a whip on my followers to force them to do what? Tafaqquh fi din. It's that serious. Imam al-Sadiq salamullah alayhi is trying to emphasize the importance of this. I wish I could use, in other words, people aren't doing this. My followers aren't doing this. I wish I could. It's not possible. God says that's not the way. It's not going to be effective. But by wording his frustration, he tells us how important it is. I wish I could use a whip to get my followers to go and do tafaqquh fi din. Tafaqquh fi din is what? Understanding. Understanding. One of the biggest problems that we have, even when it comes to taslim, that was the topic last night, submitting, is ignorance and lack of understanding. As soon as we hear, let me again use that example, the person who stood up and objected. If you really think, if he had a little bit of thought and understanding, he would have been able to realize there's no room for the objection. You are objecting to the Prophet mentioning that people who've come for Hajj will be in the state of hil, the opposite of ihram. It's not going to be haram for them to look in the mirror anymore. It's not going to be haram for them to wear regular clothing. It's not going to be haram for them to wear perfume. You're making this objection for what reason? Because of the sanctity, the respect of this sanctuary, the haram of Allah. If you think a little bit, if you have a little bit of understanding, you come to realize that if you want to respect this sanctity, you've got to submit to whatever Rasulullah says. One of the roots of the problem is lack of understanding. Tafaqquh is not there. One of the problems that we face is that when we celebrate the celebrations of the Ahlul Bayt, when we commemorate the shahadat of the Ahlul Bayt, we are able to remember a few lines of history. We are able to remember a few names. But when it comes to understanding what they said, what they did, there's not much of that happening. And the result is, as a community, what we reflect is not the lifestyle of the Ahlul Bayt. While we claim to be the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, I was reminded of a hadith last night. We were having a conversation at the hotel with Sayyid Jawad. And he reminded me, he was mentioning he listened to this lecture from Ayatollah Misbah. May Allah bless his soul. It was one of the teachers that I had the blessing of attending his public sessions, nothing special, none of the philosophy classes, just basic akhlaq classes he used to have public at the leader's office in Qom. I was able to attend for a couple or a few years. I was able to attend. He said he found an audio of one of them. In that, Ayatollah Misbah had mentioned this hadith, and I remembered, I hadn't heard it from him, I had read it myself. He reminded me of it. A group of people go to visit Imam al-Rida, salamullah wa salawatuhu alayh. When they go to the door, they knock, the person comes to see who it is. He asks, they say, tell the Imam that it is a group of his followers, the Shia. He goes and tells the Imam says, don't let him in. I don't remember how long. Sayyid Jawad last night said, Ayatollah Misbah said 2 months. That sounded a little too much from what I remember, but I'm going to trust that because I looked at it a while back. 2 months. They would come maybe every day, knock, the Imam would reject them. When it got close to them leaving, they've been there for 2 months. They came to the door again, and the person asked the same question, same response came. They said, can you tell the Imam, we've been waiting for 2 months. He hasn't let us in. We're going to be leaving. Can we get to see him? Then the Imam tells them, tell them that the reason is you claimed something that you're not. You claimed that you're the Shia. Shia of Ali are big names. Examples of the Shia is not someone like me. That's not a Shia. Follower is a big claim. That's what Shia means. We've used it so casually that it's just something that we identify as. Shia is just a term, it's just a word. Follower, am I following Ali? I should be shivering to claim such a great thing. Who is Ali? Who am I to call myself a follower of Ali? Okay. He said, yeah, you're muhib, you're lovers of the Ahlul Bayt. Then they apologized, they were allowed to come in. Are we followers of the Ahlul Bayt? They wanted followers. Mahabba of the Ahlul Bayt, the love of the Ahlul Bayt is good, is great, is effective in many ways. But is it enough? Is that the goal? Is that what we're aiming at? Is that the highest? Because when you say mahabba and there's no following, that's a very low level of mahabba, barely there. Barely there. If there's real love, would you not want to be someone that the 12th Imam would like to visit? If you really love him, right? You really love him? Do you love him enough for you to want him to come to your house? Or is it the case that when you hear he's in town, you start panicking, oh my God, I hope he doesn't come to my house. What am I going to do if he comes to my house? Is that the type of house or home that we have created? You know what that means, right? We all have hope. There's that poet, all of you know, Sayyida Ja'far, right? He said, don't call this cloak, this kafan, a kafan, it's the cloak that I'll be visiting my Mawla Amir al-Mu'mineen. You've heard this line of poetry for him, right? That's how we should be viewing death. A person who hears that the Imam of our time is in town and they don't feel comfortable for the Imam to come to their house, that means you don't feel comfortable to see the Imam the moment that you leave this world. Is that the way we want to leave this world? Is that the level of love that we have? The more you love the Imam, the more you're going to be following the Imam. Love minus following the Imam is a very, very low standard of love. Very low standard of love. When you want to go up the ranks of the love of the Ahlul Bayt, it must include following and submitting more and more. Okay. One of the things that Imam al-Sadiq says, and he's frustrated, that's what this language tells us. I wish I could use a whip on my followers to develop tafaqquh fi din. Without tafaqquh, it is not possible to follow the Ahlul Bayt. You can't be a Shia without tafaqquh. Without tafaqquh, it is impossible to be a Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib. It is impossible. You're not going to understand him. If you don't have tafaqquh, you're not even going to understand what he said. This is what happens. Again, I don't want to give examples. People get bogged down. The example, instead of elaborating and helping a person to understand, sometimes it prevents people from understanding. So I'm not going to give examples. Many times we see the words of the Imam, the words of Imam al-Hussain, misunderstood. They're repeated. Everyone, if I say the word, the sentence I'm referring to, all of you will know it. But I guarantee you, 99.9% of us do not understand what the Imam is saying. Without tafaqquh, this is not me saying it. This is not a claim that I'm making. It's in our hadith. We have hadith that says, كَلَامُنَا صَعْبٌ مُسْتَصْعَبٌ. It's difficult. If you've heard that the Quran has muhkam in mutashabih, the Quran has phrases, sentences, verses that are crystal clear, and then there are mutashabihat, there are sentences that may have one of 2 or 3 or 4 meanings. And if you don't use the clear verses and just refer to the mutashabih ones, you might be misled and have the wrong understanding of what that verse is. This is in the Quran, Surah Al-Imran, first page. God says that. Hadith says, our words have muhkam and mutashabih as well. The Ahlul Bayt have said. Without tafaqquh, it is impossible to follow the Ahlul Bayt. Example, historically, plenty. The problem for the good people in Medina after the demise of Rasulullah, the good people, not the bad ones. There's a few bad ones, I don't need to name them. You all know the leaders, the names of those leaders. Okay. But there are many good people that got caught up in that. They made wrong decisions. Later on, they came back to Amir al-Mu'mineen, but they didn't do the right thing. Why? Tafaqquh. Tafaqquh. Understanding what they need to do. It's missing. It's missing. Imam al-Hasan's time, another example I want to give because that's one we hear less of. Imam al-Hasan signed a treaty with Muawiyah. His closest companions objected to him. The same ones that, not the ones who left him, not the ones who betrayed him, not the ones who joined Muawiyah, the ones who were willing to die for him. When he said, we need to sign this treaty, they objected and called him a coward. Tafaqquh, if it's not there, you're not going to be able to do taslim. They're willing to submit, to go and fight when that's the command. When the command is no, we should stop fighting, they're not willing to do that. In Siffin, Malik, this man who is a role model for us, when eventually, because at the beginning of the Battle of Siffin, Malik is a little different. He makes some mistakes. Amir al-Mu'mineen gives commands. Malik refuses because he has a misunderstanding. But he gets trained in the battlefield. At the end of the battle, he's right by the tent of Muawiyah. Imagine that. A few more strikes, you're going to get rid of this monster. And everything's going to be over. Amir al-Mu'mineen sends someone, Malik, stop, come back. What are you going to do? You're a warrior. You're about to finalize this victory. But Amir al-Mu'mineen says, nope, come back. He did not refuse this time. He got trained. He developed a higher degree of tafaqquh. He returned. It's not worth it. If Ali says, I don't know what the deal is, but Ali says, it's time to come back. So we're going to go back. These lines of history that we hear, it's easy to hear them and commend the people that were there. Being there is a difficult task. Very difficult task. Tafaqquh fi d-din is necessary. Not for a small group of people. Everyone has got to engage in tafaqquh. The Quran, one of the other words, I use the verse that refers to tafaqquh because the hadith I wanted to cite has the word tafaqquh in it. Tafaqquh means what? A deep understanding of something. That's what tafaqquh means. There are other words that are slightly different in meaning but refer to the same idea where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنِ أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنِ. Do you not contemplate? Why do they not contemplate and reflect on the meanings of the Quran? What do you obtain when you reflect, think, ponder upon the verses of the Quran? You start to gain more understanding. That's the process that leads to tafaqquh. Another verse in the Quran, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. And this is repeated in one of the chapters of the Quran, that line right there, that sentence. We have certainly made the Quran easy for remembering, for dhikr. هَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Is there anyone that wants to be reminded? Reminded of concepts. Remember, we mentioned this yesterday. Being reminded is not being reminded of something that is as simple as the lights are on. Well, yeah, it's very simple. It's lights are on. I don't need to repeat 5 times in this session, the lights are on. I don't even need to say it once. You enter the room, you know the lights are on. Otherwise, it will be dark in here. Okay. But when you're trying to learn math, it needs to be repeated. When you're trying to learn grammar, it needs to be repeated. When you're trying to learn physics, it needs to be repeated. The teachings of the divine related to the world, how he created the world, what his relationship with the world is a lot more complex than any of these sciences. And it takes years to get to a certain level of understanding on any of those topics. And again, when you get to a certain level and you think you've arrived at the meaning, you refer to the Quran and you realize it says, continue remembering. And when you keep doing that, you realize, oh, there's a deeper level that I didn't understand. You get to a deeper level, you see that that is also not the end of it. And you keep going and there's no end. Imam al-Sadiq says, I want every single one of you to have tafaqquh fi d-din. Where are we on this, brothers and sisters? Let's self-reflect. Let's have a moment. If we want to implement this, okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, let's start from scratch. Brothers and sisters, it's the birth of the Ahlul Bayt, the month of Sha'ban. We're preparing for the month of Ramadan. Let's decide to change. Okay, we want to do that. Where do we start? What are we going to do? What do we need to change? Are we already doing this, or do we have a serious problem on this? Like, okay, if we are doing this, if you think we're doing this, then great. When I look at myself and community at large, I'm like, nope, it's not happening. And I think any one of us if we look at ourselves first and foremost, and then see what's happening in the community, I think we will arrive at the same conclusion. So the question again is, all right, how do we change this? One of the solutions that comes, one of the things that is said is, okay, let's invite these types of people. Let's invite more, I don't know, these types of Maulanas. Let's not invite those other types of speakers. Let's make sure that the topic is this. Let's make sure the topic is that. Is that really how we're going to do this? The answer that I have for you is nope, that is not the way. That is not how this is going to happen. That's not going to lead. Let's go to the words of the Ahlul Bayt regarding this. Did the Ahlul Bayt say in order to do this? Did the Quran say in order to do this, you need to go and find someone who studied the Quran, hopefully, and studied the Hadith, hopefully. Because some of us speakers come and act like we understand things and we don't. Some of us come here and we say the verse of the Quran says this, and if you really put the person in a position to answer the question as to where they got that understanding from the verse, they're not going to be able to explain it from the verse. They're not going to be able to say, well, this word means that because this dictionary, that dictionary says this, and this grammatic point here tells you that, and so on and so forth. Rather, they'll tell you, this other person said the verse says this. Oh, so you didn't refer to the Quran yourself. Can you refer to the Quran yourself? The speaker who's giving a speech here, are you yourself able to refer to the Quran? Can you understand it? Or do you have to say, Allama Tabatabai, and act like you know a lot? Allama Tabatabai said this. Well, may Allah bless Allama Tabatabai. So Allama Tabatabai is Allama Tabatabai. Okay, great. It's not God's word. Can you tell me you're convinced this verse means this, and explain to me why you're convinced? Did the Ahlul Bayt say, go to someone who has even, Allama Tabatabai, may Allah bless us all, if Allah brought him back, he's Allama Tabatabai, he's done a whole 20-volume work on the Quran. How do I do tafaqquh? Ya Allah, that you mentioned in the Quran, لِيَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. Ask Imam al-Sadiq, you said for me, you want me to do tafaqquh such that you said I wish I had a whip that I could use. I want to, without you using a whip on me, I want to gain that tafaqquh. How do I? Did Imam al-Sadiq say you need to refer to a person who has read the Quran? Did he say you need to refer to a person who has read our hadith? No. What does he say? There's a hadith in Al-Kafi. Go read it. Imam al-Baqir, salamullah alayh. And the narrator is Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. Imam, according to the narration, we don't know the context, this is just the wording that we find in Al-Kafi. The Imam refers to Jabir, Imam al-Baqir, the fifth Imam. He refers to him and says, Jabir, is it enough for a person to be a Shia to love us? He says, by Allah, that's not the case. And then he starts listing the qualities of the Shia. One of the main ones, one of the first ones, it's not the first one, but one of the first ones, is that they should be known for reading the Quran. Okay? And there's plenty of ahadith about reading the Quran. Now here's a problem. When we say reading the Quran, the Imam said the Shia should be known for reading the Quran. What do we understand from that? Go teach our kids how to read the text of the Quran. And we've done great. In our Sunday schools, we learn, okay, this is the fatha, kasra, dhamma, this is a shidda, this is sukoon, this is how you, it's ha, it's kha, sad is pronounced like this, and so on and so forth. And we have our youngsters, the ones who go through it and learn everything, they come out here, Bismillah, with full Arabic pronunciation. Can you pause and tell me what this word means? I have no clue. Is that what the Imam is saying when he says they should be known for reading the Quran, reading a text that they don't understand? That was never the purpose of the Quran. The Quran is a book of guidance. When it says reading it, it means reading with understanding. Reading the Quran never meant read it without understanding. We have gone astray that our notion of reading the Quran is sit together in the month of Ramadan. We have to do a khatma of the Quran. Okay, fast, quickly. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alif Lam Mim. Dhalika al-Kitabu la rayba fih. We got 30 minutes. Let's finish the juz. What do we understand from it? Nothing. What kind of reading of the Quran is that? Is that referring to Imam al-Baqir and what he said? No, that's not what Imam al-Baqir says. He's not referring. Reading a book never means that. Show me another book that when you read, you don't get anything from it. Is there any class in the world that you go and read a book and have no idea what the book is saying? Is the purpose of reading any other book just reading it? It's just hilarious. This is hilarious. What we have turned into is hilarious. You read any book to learn what that book says. God spoke to you to give you guidance, and we've created an alternative, which is to read the book without having a clue what it says. And we feel good about that. MashaAllah. Allahu Akbar. What great followers of the Ahlul Bayt. No clue. What does God say? And then all these superstitious views of reading the Quran start to emerge. Like, oh, there's jinn. You want to get rid of jinn? Do surah, I don't know. Do the 4 Qul huwallahu ahad. Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil nas. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq. Is that the purpose of Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq? Is that the purpose of Qul a'udhu bi rabbil nas? Some jinn is going to strangle you when you're in your bed. Watched a horror movie and you think jinns are supposed to do that, and now you have found some solution, Islamic solution. You read this line, memorize it, and when you do that, the jinn are not going to strangle you to death. What is this superstition? And then you have people that start to make money off of this. They make money off of it. You're like, oh, I have this problem. There's sihr. What's sihr? Did you read the Quran about sihr? You know what God says about sihr? When you start creating these delusions of what reality is, you're just, oh, the word sihr is in the Quran, there's reality to it. Oh, this must be, my daughter must be, some magic or something has happened, my son or my daughter, that's why they're not getting married. Let's go find someone who can break this spell. You go pay a little something, they write a little something, put this in your pocket or read this many times. What is this garbage? Is that what the Quran is for? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. And then they make a hadith. They fabricate hadith about this. Oh, this was to protect Hassanain. What are you talking about? Just read the text of the chapter and you'll know what this is about. The only way to gain tafaqquh, the Ahlul Bayt have said it. The Quran says, I already mentioned the verse. It says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. So we made it easy to go to the Quran itself. That's what we did. You want to gain tafaqquh? Go to the Quran itself. You want tafaqquh? After referring to the Quran, go to the ahadith and see which ones are fabrications because they don't match the Quran. And then when you want to understand the hadith, understand it in light of the Quran. That's what they said. The Prophet said in Hajjatul Wada in Mina, he said, while I'm alive, they are fabricating and attributing lies to me. You could just imagine what's going to happen after I pass. He says, whatever that's attributed to me conforms with the Quran, I have said it. Whatever does not, I have not said it. And here we are, referring to hadith, those of us who even go that far. Go to hadith, but no reference to the Quran. What does the Quran mean? I don't know, it's too difficult. It's easier to read hadith. No. The foundation is the Quran. The reason why we are told to read the Quran is not to just read a text that we don't understand. It is to read a text that has meaning to gain that meaning, to be reminded of it, it's very in-depth. You are required to read it over and over for it to start to speak to you. And over again for it to speak to you more. One of the things that we don't realize, the magnificence of the Quran, is that God made the Quran a guidance for someone as low as me. The same book is guidance for Rasulullah and Fatima al-Zahra and Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussain, who are the highest of creation. The same text. I read Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. They read Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. I gain something from it if I try. They gain something from it when they're always trying. They continue to gain from it. Brothers, sisters, the path to tafaqquh that Imam al-Sadiq says, Allah says, is for us to read the text of God, the Quran. First and foremost. The books of hadith, Al-Kafi, Man La Yahduruhu Al-Faqih, Tahdhib Al-Ahkam, Al-Istibsar, Kitab Al-Tawheed, Kitab Al-Ghayba, Al-Ghayba of Nu'mani, all these books of hadith, the list continues, which Allah bless the people who were involved in gathering these. I never want to say people should not refer to it. I will never say that. It is wrong to say that. What I do say is that we cannot know for a fact that every single word there is recorded correctly, in that the Imam said it and said it in that way. We cannot be sure of that. But we can be 110% sure that the wording of the Quran is a revelation of Allah. This is how it was revealed. You know, this is exactly how God said it. So the only thing you need to do is to understand what it says. With the other book, there's a process of, is it said, is it not said, how can I know? Well, they said how you can know. See if it conforms with the Quran. If I don't have knowledge of the Quran, how can I see if it conforms with the Quran or not? How can I assume that this limited, probably very, very inaccurate, probably many misunderstandings of the Quran that I have before I start reading the Quran, we have all these assumptions. We have so many assumptions because we've heard things. We never check. We hear things. The Quran says this. Brother or sister comes and asks, the Quran says this, and then they want to ask a question about it. I said, the Quran doesn't say that. Oh, but it's, no, show me. Where is it? It's not in the Quran. But it's said. Yeah, a lot of things are said. You can go and find it. If you find it, show me. It's not there. This idea that you're mentioning is not in the Quran. We are unfamiliar with the Quran. How can the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt be unfamiliar with the Quran? Muhib of the Ahlul Bayt, yeah, that's possible. But Shia of the Ahlul Bayt, no, it's not possible. You can't be a Shia of the Ahlul Bayt and not have a clue what the Quran says. Because the Ahlul Bayt have said, this is the Shia, this is a description. It's not just one, I refer to one hadith and the verses of the Quran. Brothers, sisters, don't wait for someone to come and give it to you. God has already given it to you. It's sitting on your bookshelf. It's on your phone. It's an app. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala, this day and age, no one has an excuse. If you don't know classical Arabic, which you should know, that's one of the things we should all do. One of the things that I accept fault, I apologize to Allah, and I will work on it. I will work on it, developing courses. Whoever is willing to sit down and learn classical Arabic should have access to courses for them to learn classical Arabic so they can learn and understand the Quran directly. Okay, you don't have that yet? You want to start today? Okay. There are over 20, maybe 30 or 40 translations just in the English language of the Quran. Now that's not reading the Word of God directly, but it's the closest thing for someone who has not learned classical Arabic. You can go and look at these different translations, see where they are different. There's dictionaries, Arabic English dictionaries. You can check the words that are there and see which translation is probably more accurate. Do some work, but the text is with you, the apps are with you. You have a Quran app, plenty of them. Websites of the Quran with multitudes of translations. Dictionaries online, Arabic, your Apple phone, Android phone, whatever phone you have. There's Arabic English dictionary. Just type the word. You're going to get an idea. We're not willing to even take these small steps that are possible. We need to do this. You can't wait. You can't wait on anyone. Start taking the steps that you can. Read the Quran. Read the Quran. Try to understand it. Begin the process. The language of the Quran is different than the way any human speaks. That's one of the ways that God has preserved it. That's why when we human beings that are familiar with human talk and human text, we know what poetry looks like, we know what regular writing is. When you go to the Quran, you're confused. It's not poetry, it's not that. What is it? It's God's language. It's Arabic. The rules of grammar are the same. The words, the vocabulary is the same. The metaphors are ones that Arabs would recognize. It's all understandable by classical Arabic. At the time, the Arabs, because today Arabic has changed. You got to study classical Arabic. If you learn how to speak Arabic, you're not going to understand the Quran. Spoken Arabic is one thing, classical Arabic is another. You need classical Arabic to understand the Quran and the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt. It's the language of God. Learning His style requires acquaintance. You got to keep reading it. Just say, those of you who are not familiar with poetry, or those of you who know poetry, you know the process. When you started off, you didn't understand poetry. You saw people reading poetry that were really taking pleasure in hearing the poetry and reading the poetry. They could understand things. You didn't understand it initially. You worked on it. You kept referring to it, reading it, going to those sessions, and gradually you start to enjoy poetry. You start to understand poetry. With the Quran, you got to keep going to it. You have to keep reading it. You start learning the style that God speaks. It's going to start speaking to you. And God has said that that's what it's required. That's what is required. فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ Surah Al-Muzammil. Read whatever you can. You don't have time to sit down and read 2-3 pages and think about it. All right, read 2 lines. Just 2 lines and think about it. God has promised. He has promised, if you try to read my book, I will give you understanding. But if you're not trying to get understanding, you're not asking for it. We're not asking for it. We need this, inshallah. Allah give us the blessing of understanding His word, bi'idhnillah, and by the right of the Ahlul Bayt, by the right of Fatima Zahra. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the return of our Imam. We ask Allah. I apologize. I remembered that I needed to ask something. One of my friends of my teens from Maryland, his father passed away a few days ago. The brother who passed away, his name is Farhad Abdul Rahimi, passed away in Maryland. A couple days ago, he needs du'as, just like all the marhumin that have been mentioned. There's probably some that you know. Brother Wajahat Siddiqui also, relatively recently in this community, I heard and I haven't seen him, obviously, he passed away as well. All the marhumin, including the brothers that I mentioned, the sisters that are probably, some I heard recently passed away as well. Let's recite Surah Al-Fatiha and then I'll end with dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, maliki yawmiddin, iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ya Allah, by the right of Fatima Zahra, the Prophet, her father, Amirul Mu'mineen, her husband, Hassanain, her children, and the rest of the A'imma, grant us all the light of the Quran in our hearts, the ability to understand it, the ability to implement it. Ya Allah, help all those who are helping your cause, especially our ulama, our mujahideen, our maraja, and above all our leader. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us all of our sins, forgive our parents, our grandparents, our relatives, all believers, those who are alive, those who passed away. Ya Allah, we ask you to grant us all lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, followers of the Ahlul Bayt, Muslimin, Mu'mineen, Mu'minat, all people who need help. Ya Allah, by the right of the Ahlul Bayt, grant us all our hajat, our needs, our requests. Relieve all those who are suffering from hardships, difficulties, illnesses. There are people in this community that are hospitalized. They are struggling with different illnesses. Ya Allah, by the right of the Ahlul Bayt on these days of Eid, relieve them of their pains and their difficulties and illnesses. Ya Allah, relieve all the people of the world of the oppressions they're facing. Min Nabi wa Ali, rahimallah man qara al-Fatihata ma'a as-salawat.